My wife paid for an unknown person who could not pay, and when he turned back and said those 7 words, she broke down crying in front of everyone. But that was not even the shocking part. I was standing frozen near the pharmacy section of Peachtree Plaza grocery store in Atlanta, watching my wife Amara behind register 4 at 7:15 in the evening. She had worked a brutal double shift since 6 that morning. Our rent was 3 days late. We had been eating rice and beans for 2 weeks straight. The last $20 in our world sat folded in her apron pocket, money that had to last until Friday. Then a tired stranger approached her register, and everything changed. Before we move on, tell me in the comments which state you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's episode may touch a story that is still unfolding. The line at her register stretched past the dairy aisle. Impatient faces, phones glowing. A woman in expensive athleisure wear tapped her credit card against her palm. Behind her stood a man in his late 50s. His clothes were worn but clean. He carried a basket with bread, peanut butter, bananas, and milk. Simple groceries, survival groceries, the kind you buy when every dollar has already been counted twice. Amara scanned his items without looking up. She had learned not to make eye contact anymore. People treated cashiers like furniture. The total came to $18.63. The man reached into his pocket. His hand came out empty. He tried the other pocket. Nothing. His face changed. That specific kind of panic that only poverty creates. "I thought I had," he started. The woman behind him sighed loudly. "Are you serious right now?" He checked his jacket. His wallet was not there. "I must have left it in my car. I can run out and—" "We do not have all night," someone from the back of the line shouted. Amara finally looked up. Her eyes found his face. I saw something pass between them. Recognition, maybe, not of each other, but of struggle itself. The manager, Dinder, walked over with his clipboard and his authority and his judgment already formed. "Sir, if you cannot pay, you need to step aside." The man nodded. Humiliation settled on his shoulders like a coat he could not remove. He began to move away from the counter. The woman in athleisure wear rolled her eyes and moved forward. Others in line started whispering. I watched Amara's hand move to her apron pocket. She pulled out a crumpled $20 bill, our last 20, the money we were supposed to use for gas to make it through the week. She did not hesitate. "I have it," Amara said quietly. The store went silent, not the kind of silence that happens naturally, but the kind that gets forced into existence when something unexpected breaks through the noise of ordinary cruelty. Amara placed the $20 bill on the counter. Her fingers were steady. Dinder stared at her like she had just spoken a language he did not understand. The woman in athleisure wear froze mid-eye roll. "What are you doing?" Dinder asked. "Paying for his groceries." "That is against policy." "Then write me up." I had never heard Amara speak to management that way. She had always been careful, polite. We could not afford to lose this job, but something in her voice had shifted. It was not anger. It was decision, the kind that comes from a place beyond fear. The man at the counter turned back around. His eyes were wide. "Ma'am, you do not have to." "I already did." Dinder opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He looked around at the crowd that had gathered. Phones were already out. He knew how this would look. A manager stopping an act of kindness. He stepped back. Amara completed the transaction. She bagged the groceries herself carefully like they mattered, like he mattered. The man took the bag but could not move. His throat worked like he was trying to swallow something too large. "Thank you," he finally whispered. "You have no idea what this means." Amara just nodded. She did not want gratitude. She wanted him to eat. He walked toward the automatic doors. I watched him go, already calculating in my head how we would manage without that $20. How I would explain to Amara later that kindness was a luxury we could not afford. How I would tell her she should have thought about us first. But then he stopped. The automatic doors opened and closed behind him, confused about whether he was coming or going. He stood there for what felt like a full minute. Then he turned around. His walk back to the counter was different, purposeful. The crowd parted without being asked. He stopped directly in front of Amara. "What is your name?" She looked surprised. "Amara." "Amara," he repeated like he was memorizing it. His voice carried through the store. People had stopped pretending to shop. "My name is Diallo." The name meant nothing to me. I saw it meant nothing to Amara either, but something in the way he said it made the air in the grocery store feel different, heavier. like we were all suddenly aware we were part of something that would be remembered. Iconadialo stood there in his worn jacket and scuffed shoes, but his posture had changed. The hunched shoulders were gone. He stood like a man who had just completed a task. "Today," he said, still looking only at Amara, "I was searching for something." Dinder had his phone out now, probably texting corporate. The woman in athleisure wear had moved closer, no longer annoyed but curious. I stayed where I was near the pharmacy section, watching my wife become the center of something I could not name yet. "I have been searching for a long time," Icona continued. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "In this city, in Atlanta, in boardrooms and churches and charity events and fundraisers, I have been looking for something that seems to have disappeared from the world." Amara's hand rested on the counter. She had not moved since he returned. "What were you looking for?" "Kindness without cameras." He paused, let that settle. "Generosity without audience, love without angle." Someone in the crowd whispered something. I caught the word test, but nothing else. Icona heard it too. He nodded slowly. "Yes, a test. I have been betrayed by people who smiled at me. I have been used by people who called themselves friends. I have given to organizations that spent more on galas than on the causes they claimed to serve. So I decided to find out if real compassion still existed when nobody was watching, when there was no reward, no recognition, no viral moment to leverage." He gestured at himself. "These clothes are not mine. This wallet I supposedly forgot in my car does not exist. I have done this same thing in 17 different stores across Atlanta over the past month. Coffee shops, restaurants, gas stations, pharmacies, always the same situation, always unable to pay, always watching to see what people would do when they thought nobody important was watching." The silence in the store was absolute now. Amara had gone very still. I could see her mind working, processing what this meant. 16 times, Icona said. People walked past me. Managers called security. Customers complained about the holdup. One woman told me I should be ashamed of myself. Another man said I was probably spending my welfare check on drugs. He looked around at the crowd, making eye contact with several people. Some looked away. "But you," he turned back to Amara, "you gave what you could not afford to lose." Amara's eyes filled, but she did not cry yet. That would come later. Right now, she just stood there behind her register, holding onto the counter like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Icona reached into his jacket pocket, the same pocket he had pretended to search earlier. He pulled out a worn leather wallet and from it, a photograph. "This is my mother," he said, holding it so only Amara could see it first, then turning it slightly so others nearby could glimpse it. An older woman with kind eyes and a church hat. "Her name was Ruth. She died 2 years ago. Before she passed, she told me something I did not understand until today." He put the photograph back carefully. "She said that America had become a country of people waiting to be impressed instead of people willing to impress God. She said we had turned morality into performance art, that we only did good when cameras were rolling or tax deductions were available or social media could witness our virtue." Dinder had lowered his phone. The woman in athleisure wear had tears on her face and did not seem to know why. I felt something in my chest, something uncomfortable and necessary. "My mother cleaned houses for 40 years, Icona continued. She never made more than $12 an hour, but I watched her give away half her groceries to neighbors. I watched her pay other people's light bills. I watched her buy school supplies for children who were not hers. And when I asked her why, she said the same thing every time." He paused. His voice dropped. "She said real love is when someone gives what they cannot afford to lose." Amara made a sound, small, broken, the kind of sound that comes from being seen completely. Icona looked at her with something beyond gratitude, recognition, like finding a member of a tribe you thought had gone extinct. "You did not know me," he said. "You did not know if I was worthy. You did not know if I would appreciate it or waste it or even remember it tomorrow. You just knew I needed help and you had something to give. That is what my mother meant. That is what I have been searching for." He reached into his pocket again and pulled out a business card. Not from a worn wallet this time, but from an inside pocket where real things are kept. "My company is called Dialo Solutions. We develop affordable housing in underserved communities. We employ over 300 people. I am not telling you this to impress you. I am telling you this so you understand that I do not need your $20. He placed the $20 bill back on the counter, smoothed flat, facing Amara. Then he placed his business card on top of it. But I needed to know people like you still existed. The tears came then. Amara tried to hold them back, but they came anyway, silent and steady, running down her face while she stood there in her grocery store uniform under fluorescent lights that had witnessed 1,000 mundane transactions, but never this. Never someone being told they were the proof that goodness had not died completely. Ikena did not move to comfort her. He understood that some moments need to break before they can heal. I have been angry, he said softly, speaking now like the crowd did not exist, like it was just the two of them in a confession that needed to be heard by the world anyway. After my mother died, I inherited everything she had built. Not money, because she never had much of that, but relationships, reputation, trust. And I watched people come out of nowhere claiming they had been her best friend, asking for loans, for investments, for opportunities they said she had promised them. He looked down at his hands. I gave to everyone. I wanted to honor her memory by being generous like she was, and one by one they disappeared once they got what they wanted, or they came back asking for more, or they sued me claiming I owed them something I had never promised. I became bitter. I started to believe my mother had been naive. That kindness was just weakness wearing a moral costume. Amara wiped her face with the back of her hand. Your mother was not naive, she said. Her voice was hoarse. Your mother understood something most people forget. What is that? That you do not stop doing good because bad people exist. You do good because good people need to recognize each other in the dark. Ikena closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. The crowd around them had grown. People from other aisles had abandoned their shopping. Even customers from the other registers had migrated over. They stood there watching two people cry in a grocery store, and nobody thought it was strange. Today you reminded me of her, Ikena said, his voice breaking on the last word. Not because you were kind. Lots of people are kind when it costs them nothing. You reminded me of her because you were kind when it cost you everything. Because you saw another person struggling and you decided their need was greater than your own. That is not charity. That is love. The real kind. The kind that does not calculate or hesitate or wait for permission. He picked up his grocery bag, the one Amara had carefully packed. I do not need these groceries, but I am going to keep them. I am going to keep them as a reminder that I was wrong, that my mother was right, that people like you are rare but you do exist. 3 days passed before we heard from him again. 3 days of Amara working her shifts and me driving rideshare to make up for the $20 she had given away. 3 days of me wanting to be angry at her, but finding I could not locate the anger anywhere inside me. It had been replaced by something else. Something that felt like watching someone you thought you knew reveal they are actually better than you had given them credit for. The knock on our apartment door came at 6:30 in the evening on a Thursday. Our neighborhood in southwest Atlanta was not the kind of place where unexpected visitors were usually good news. I opened the door with my hand near my phone, ready to call for help if needed. Ikena Diallo stood there in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. No cameras, no entourage, just a man holding a small bag from a bakery. I hope I am not intruding, he said. I wanted to speak with Amara if she has a few minutes. Amara appeared behind me, still in her work clothes. Her eyes went wide. Mr. Diallo. Please, just Ikena. He held up the bag. I brought dessert if that is appropriate. We let him in because what else do you do when someone who tested humanity in a grocery store shows up at your door with pastries? Our apartment was small. The furniture was thrift store material held together with hope. The walls needed paint, but Ikena sat on our worn couch like it was the most natural thing in the world, and he waited until we were all settled before he spoke. I need to explain something, he began, and I need to do it here privately because what happened at the store was public, but what I am about to tell you is personal. He told us about the betrayals. His college roommate who had borrowed $50,000 to start a business, then cut Ikena out once it became profitable. His ex-fiancée who had stayed with him just long enough to be named in his mother's will, then left 2 weeks after the funeral. The nonprofit director who had convinced him to donate $100,000 for youth programs, then used it to renovate the executive offices. The church that had promised to name a community center after his mother if he funded it, but after his check cleared, decided to honor a wealthier donor instead. I was not testing people to punish them, Ikena said. I was testing people to see if I should give up, if I should accept that my mother's way of living was beautiful but unsustainable in a world full of users and takers. Amara listened without interrupting. I realized I had never really watched her listen before. She did it with her whole body, leaning forward slightly, her eyes never leaving his face. And then you paid for groceries I did not need with money you desperately did, Ikena continued. You did not ask my name, you did not ask if I deserved it, you did not make a show of it, you just did it because it was right. He set down his coffee cup on our scratched table and looked at both of us. I did not come here to offer you money, I hope you understand that. If I hand you a check right now, I turn what you did into a transaction. I turn your kindness into an investment that paid off. That would ruin it. Amara nodded slowly. I understand. But I do want to know about your life, about your struggles, not because I am looking for a project or a charity case, because I am trying to understand what kind of person gives away their last $20. He paused. Will you tell me? So we told him. Amara did most of the talking. She explained how she had been working at the grocery store for 2 years, trying to save enough to go back to school for nursing. How every time we got close to having enough saved, something would break or someone would get sick or the car would need repairs. How she had grown up watching her grandmother care for people in their neighborhood, never turning anyone away, always finding room at the table for one more person. How she had promised herself she would live that same way, even when it made no sense financially. I told him about my own shame. How I had been laid off from my warehouse job 8 months ago. How I was driving for rideshare apps now, working 12-hour days and barely covering our bills. How I had started to resent Amara's generosity because I could not afford to match it. How I had become someone who calculated the cost of kindness instead of just being kind. Ikena listened to all of it. He did not interrupt. He did not offer solutions. He just listened the way Amara had listened to him, with full attention and no judgment. When we finished, he was quiet for a long time. May I ask you something? He finally said, looking at Amara. When you gave me that money, did you think about what it would cost you? Yes. And you did it anyway. Yes. Why? Amara thought about it. Because I have been that person, the one at the register who cannot pay, the one people look at with disgust or pity. I have been there, and I remember how small it made me feel, how worthless, like I did not deserve to take up space in the world. She met his eyes. I could not let someone else feel that way, not if I had the power to stop it. Ikena nodded slowly, like she had just confirmed something he needed to know. My mother used to say that poverty is not about money, it is about dignity. She said you can have nothing and still be rich if you keep your dignity, and you can have everything and be bankrupt if you lose it. He reached into his pocket and I tensed, worried he was about to violate his own rule and offer us money. But instead, he pulled out a simple notebook. I am not going to give you charity, but I want to offer you something else. Guidance, mentorship, access to people and opportunities that might help you build the life you are working toward. Amara stiffened. I saw her back straight and saw that same steel that had made her talk back to her manager emerge again. I appreciate what you are trying to do, she said carefully, but I need to build my own future. I need to know that whatever I achieve, I earned it myself, not because someone powerful decided I was worthy of rescue. Ikena smiled. It was the first real smile I had seen from him. Good, that is exactly the right answer. That is exactly what my mother would have said. He opened his notebook. I am not offering to rescue you. I am offering to stop you from making the mistakes I made, the expensive mistakes, the time-wasting mistakes, the mistakes that happen because nobody taught you how the system actually works. He explained that he ran a fellowship program through his company. Every year, they selected 20 people who were working toward careers in community development, healthcare, education, or affordable housing. They provided business training, networking opportunities, and mentorship. No money, no handouts, just information and access. The program starts in 8 weeks, he said. The application deadline passed 2 months ago. We already selected our fellows for this year, but I am on the selection committee and I have some influence. He looked at Amara. If you are interested in nursing, if that is truly your goal, then this program can connect you with hospital administrators and healthcare executives and scholarship committees, people who can open doors, not hand you things, just open doors you did not know existed. Amara looked at me. I had never seen her ask me for permission before, but this moment felt too large for her to decide alone. I nodded. You should do it, I said. You should absolutely do it. She turned back to Ikena. What do I have to do? Show up, learn, work harder than everyone else, and when you succeed, which you will, you remember what it felt like to be helped and you help someone else. He tore a page from his notebook and wrote down an address and a date. The program meets twice a week for 6 months, evenings so you can still work, no cost, no obligation, just opportunity. Amara took the paper like it was something fragile. Why are you doing this? Because when my mother died, she left me a list. Literally, a handwritten list of instructions for what to do with her estate. Most of it was practical. Sell the house, pay off the car, donate her clothes. But at the bottom, she wrote something else. He recited it from memory. Find the people who give what they cannot afford to lose. Those are your people. Those are the ones worth investing in. After Ikena left, Amara sat on the couch holding that piece of paper with the address and date, staring at it like it might disappear if she looked away. I sat next to her, but I could not find words that matched the size of what had just happened. We had been visited by proof that the universe sometimes worked in ways that made sense, that goodness was not just a nice idea, but an actual currency with actual value. I cannot believe this is real, she whispered. I put my arm around her and she leaned into me, and we sat there in our small apartment with its thrift store furniture and its walls that needed paint. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I did not feel poor. I felt something else entirely, something I had to search for the name of because it had been absent so long I had forgotten what it was called. Pride. I felt proud of my wife, not the vague kind of pride you feel when your partner does something nice, the deep kind. The kind that rewrites your understanding of who you married. I had spent so much time frustrated with Amara's generosity, seeing it as impractical, as financially irresponsible, as the kind of softness we could not afford. I had wanted her to be harder, more calculating, more like the world that kept kicking us. But watching her give away our last $20, watching her refuse to apologize for it, watching her stand there and accept recognition for being good when being good was supposed to be its own reward, I understood something I should have known all along. She was not soft. She was strong in a way I had never learned to be. Strong enough to stay kind when kindness made no financial sense. Strong enough to see someone else's pain and prioritize it over our own fear. We had been poor in money. This was true. Our bank account proved it. Our overdue bills proved it. Our worn furniture and our temperamental car and our one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood where sirens sang lullabies every night. All of it proved we were poor in the traditional sense. But we were rich in something else, something that apparently billionaires spent their lives searching for, something that men dressed in poor clothes and pretended to be helpless just to find evidence still existed. We were rich in heart, rich in the thing that made us human instead of just organisms surviving. I had been driving for rideshare for 8 months, picking up strangers and taking them where they needed to go, and I had started to see people as dollar signs. 5-star ratings meant better rides. Generous tippers meant I could afford gas for another shift. I had turned human beings into transactions. I had become efficient at being heartless. Amara had done the opposite. She had seen hundreds of customers every week and somehow still managed to see the man behind the inability to pay. Still managed to see the human before the inconvenience. The fellowship program changed Amara's life, but not in the dramatic way you see in movies. There was no montage of her studying with inspiring music, no moment where suddenly everything clicked and she transformed overnight. Instead, it was slow and steady. She went to the evening sessions twice a week. She met people who knew things she did not. She learned how to navigate scholarship applications and hospital hiring processes and medical school prerequisites. She learned that access was half the battle, that knowing which doors to knock on mattered as much as being qualified to walk through them. 6 months later, she was accepted into a nursing program with full financial aid. 1 year after that, she was working part-time at a hospital while finishing her degree. 2 years after that, she was a registered nurse working in the same neighborhood where we lived, caring for people who reminded her of her grandmother's community. But the real change happened the night before Ikena left Atlanta. He had been offered a development project in another city and was moving his headquarters. He came by our apartment one more time, this time with his business wrapped up and his goodbyes making their rounds. We shared a meal, nothing fancy, just what we could cook, and talked about how life had unfolded since that day in the grocery store. As he stood at the door preparing to leave, he turned to Amara one last time. The streetlight outside cast shadows through our window, and in that half-light he looked exactly like he had looked that day at the register. Worn, human, real. "I want you to know something," he said. "What you did that day did not just help me pass a test. It did not just restore my faith in humanity or any of those nice phrases people use. You did something more important than that. Amara waited. You healed a broken heart. His voice was thick. My mother taught me how to be generous with money, but after she died, after everyone used me, I lost the ability to be generous with trust. I could not see people anymore. I only saw motives. I only saw angles. I only saw what people wanted from me. He paused. You gave me back the ability to see goodness, to believe it still existed. That is what you gave me, not $20, not proof for a test. You gave me back my mother's lesson before I lost it completely. Amara's eyes filled again. She cried easily now, not from weakness but from permission, from understanding that tears were not surrender but recognition. You did not just feed a stranger, Ikena said softly. You healed a broken heart. He left. We stood at the door and watched him walk to his car, watched him drive away into Atlanta traffic, watched the taillights disappear around a corner. Then Amara turned to me and buried her face in my chest and cried the way people cry when they finally understand why their life unfolded exactly the way it did. And I held her there in our doorway and understood finally, deeply, completely why I had married her. Not because she was perfect, not because she made smart financial decisions, not because she always knew the right thing to say. I married her because when the world gave her a choice between protecting herself and protecting someone else, she chose someone else every single time. Because she was good when being good cost her everything. Because she loved in the way that actually mattered. We were poor in money. This would always be true in some form. But we were rich in the only currency that survived death, that transcended balance sheets, that could not be stolen or taxed or devalued by market crashes. We were rich in the thing that made strangers cry in grocery stores and billionaires dress in worn clothes just to find evidence it still existed. We were rich in love, the real kind, the kind his mother understood, the kind that gives what it cannot afford to lose. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching.